Hi, the following content is for educational purposes only and does not constitute medical advice. If you are a healthcare provider, please consult with your affiliated institution or local ethics committee for ethical guidance related to clinical practice.
Welcome to Bioengineering Ethics. I'm Russ Altman and I'm with David Magnus, and we will be doing these video modules, and this is the first one in a wonderful series of modules, Introduction to Ethics in Bioengineering. So the way it's going to work is David will be lecturing and I will be taking notes on a whiteboard, which you'll see in a moment. And so, David, are you ready to go?
Ready to go?
Okay, let me just bring up the whiteboard and we'll get started. I just need to find the share. There it is. And
Here we go.
okay, and just to make sure the pen is working, I will write ethics in bioengineering. Is that coming out?
Perfect.
And our first topic is basically an introduction to bioethical theory. Take it away, David.
Okay, so for the very beginning, before we even get into ethical theory, we're actually going to start with a little bit about something called metaethics. So we're going to talk about first about moral relativism. And the reason we're talking about moral relativism is because in a way, to even have a class on ethics, there has to be something to it that you can actually have a class about. And so that's kind of why we're starting with moral relativism. It's also important because most students, undergrads, when they think about ethics, they often have relatively untutored views about ethics that usually have some kind of version of moral relativism that they have in mind that would make and thinking about ethics really impossible. There are two different versions of moral relativism. First, there's individual moral relativism. Individual moral relativism says statements of right and wrong are really expressions of individual preferences. Like, I'm really just saying that, like, for me, this is wrong. Though for you, maybe something else is right or wrong. So that's moral relativism, individual moral relativism. The second version, and a lot of people believe the first version, a lot of people believe the second version, a lot of people believe some combination of both, although they are in fact contradictory. The second version is cultural moral relativism, and cultural moral relativism believes that statements of right and wrong are expressions of whatever the majority view of society thinks is correct in that society. So those are the two versions of moral relativism, and I'm going to now try and explain why those versions of moral relativism are not correct. And
And
this
when you
is
say not correct, do you mean you can't believe those two things or either one of them alone?
I think you certainly can't believe both of them because they're contradictory. Because if individual relativism was true, then something could be right even if the majority doesn't agree with it. So,
Right.
so they're contradictory. But in fact, both versions are incompatible with the moral life as we live it, and so that's why I think they're problematic and say something important about ethics. Um,
So I'm going to say they're not compatible with each other and they're not compatible with like ethical reasoning.
Correct. They're not
Okay.
compatible with ethical reasoning. Right? So the first reason why they're not compatible with ethical reasoning is you really couldn't have any moral arguments or disagreements on either version. If individual moral relativism was true, there's no moral contradiction in one person saying, I believe something is right, and somebody else saying, I believe that same thing is wrong. Because if those are just expressions of individual preference, there's nothing for them to disagree about. It's just a fact that I think this is good and you think it's bad. There's not no possibility of saying, I know you believe that this is right, but you're wrong. And let me give you arguments for why I think you're wrong. You couldn't engage in arguments. And that's a fundamental part of ethical debate is the idea that you can have debates, the idea that you can have disagreements and give reasons for why you believe the things you believe and why you disagree with the things other people have. So individual relativism would make it impossible to have that because everybody's statements of what's right and wrong is compatible with everybody else disagreeing with them because it's just a statement of preferences. Moral relativism might seem like it's a little more sophisticated, but it has similar kinds of problems. It really reduces ethics
Do you
to
mean
polar.
cultural? Do you mean cultural?
Sorry, I meant cultural
Yeah.
relativism.
Go ahead.
Cultural relativism would just be saying that, uh, let's take a poll. Is abortion right or wrong? We can answer that. We just need to poll the right way and answer what the majority of society believes. Is physician-assisted suicide or physician-assisted death, medical aid in dying, is that okay? Well, take a poll and see what most people think. Moreover, not only would it be the case that you would reduce ethics to just a poll, but it would be literally incoherent to say something like, I know most people think that X is okay, but I think they're wrong, and here are my arguments. Nobody could ever disagree with the majority, right? And you'd answer disputes and disagreements with polling data, right? If somebody's trying to argue against medical aid in dying or somebody's trying to argue in favor of it, you'd say, no, no, you're wrong. Here's some polling data. Oh, well, now I know it's wrong because 60% of people believe it. And it would also mean you couldn't judge societies that have bad values. So in a society that tolerates slavery, we'd have to say, oh, it turns out it's morally okay in that society to for slavery to be okay because a majority of people in that society believe it's okay. So, for all of these reasons, we really need to reject the idea of moral relativism. And it's really leads to something important, which is when we have moral disagreements, when we face moral dilemmas, there's actually something at stake in those disagreements and in those dilemmas. When we're fighting about things, there's something that it is to be disagreeing and reasons that can be given for different kinds of positions. So there can be good reasons why people give for their moral positions. These reasons can often and will often be related to theoretical views about ethics and frameworks, even when people are unaware of the moral frameworks they're using. And one of the things that we're going to be doing in the next set of videos that you're going to be watching is introducing you to the different moral theories and moral frameworks, many of which you use in ethical arguments all the time without necessarily being aware of the difference between them. And in fact, differences between these moral theories can also be sources of disagreement and argument. So this course is really going to be providing you with these theories and frameworks and tools you're going to use to analyze different kinds of technologies and look at different kinds of cases. Now, I do want to introduce one last concept, which is something that students have tended to get confused about. I started by saying this is not an ethical theory, but a meta-ethical theory. So I want to say a little bit about what that really means. So theories like utilitarianism or Kantianism or deontological theory or casuistry, these are different theories or theoretical frameworks that we're going to be exploring in the coming videos. They are theories that tell you what is right and wrong action. What is the right thing to do? What is the wrong thing to do? When you face a dilemma, how do you figure out what the right thing to do is or what the wrong thing to do is? And there are these different competing theories to figure all those things out. Um, Moral relativism in either form does not do that. So don't try when you're writing your papers. Do not try to apply moral relativism as an ethical framework for any of the cases that you're going to write about or think about, because it's not an ethical theory. It's not meant to be applied to cases or to be thinking about it that way. What it is a theory about what the meaning is of moral terms and what the meaning is of thinking about it. So whatever framework you've got, metaethics is a way of saying, here's how I interpret what those ethics talk really means. So it's a theory in a way of ethics language, not a theory about what's right and wrong. And what we're going to be really talking about from here on out are ethical theories about what's right and wrong. But we needed to get out of the way that the kind of views people mostly bring to the table make it impossible to even give reasons, have theories that would apply to cases that you can disagree about, and so on. And so we just had to dispense with that since that's a very intuitive view that many people bring to the table.
So good. So this is we're really teaching this because it's not a valid theory. It's not compatible with any of the theories that we will be learning, and it should not be used as the basis for any argument because of all the reasons you just went through. It doesn't constitute any basis for consistency across multiple decisions.
Yeah, no, it's a theory about the meaning of language. So there are also realist metaethical accounts which believe that when you say things are right or wrong, they correspond to some mind-independent reality. There's lots of different metaethical theories that are out there. This isn't a course on metaethics, so we're not going to talk about any of those. But it's just, this isn't a theory about right and wrong action. It's an interpretation of the meaning of ethics language. And it's the one theory that essentially is nihilistic about the possibility of substantive ethics.
And that gets us to the really the whole point of the upcoming modules in our video series, which are what are the theories that allow you to apply kind of rational reasons and rational application of principles to make decisions about right or wrong, which, if I'm not mistaken, is what ethics is.
Correct. And we will be starting that right now with with module number 2.
Thanks for tuning in. This ends module number 1.